You're listening to the Ground Transportation Podcast with Ken Lucci of Driving Transactions and James Blain of PAX Training. Learn how you can build a thriving transportation business with real profits, repeat clients, and enterprise value. And now for your hosts, Ken and James.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Ground Transportation Podcast. I am James Blain, one of the hosts from PAX Training. Unfortunately, today I'm not joined by my co-host, Ken Lucci. He is no doubt making an amazing deal happen within the industry somewhere. I believe he's actually in the air on the way there right now, so I'm sure we'll hear about that later on. Super excited about my guest today. We've got Phelps Hopes from IMG. Phelps, I'm super excited to have you on. Super excited to talk about IMG. I know when I got into the industry, IMG was kind of this group. I thought it maybe was an association. I think there's a lot of people that kind of hear IMG thrown around and think it's like ABA, UMA, and they don't quite understand the difference. But I'm most excited to talk about your background, because I think the perspective that you're bringing to the industry, kind of your background and how you got to actually be the president of IMG, is going to be one of the most exciting things we talk about today. So welcome to the podcast. I'm really excited to have you.
Terrific. James, thanks so much, mate. I appreciate it. I'm very thrilled to be here. And while I'm still getting my feet under me in this position with IMG, I certainly can talk about background easy enough.
Well, I think anybody listening from just that introduction clearly knows it's going to be exciting, because that Australian accent comes through. You've got the beautiful beaches in the background. So I think before we start talking about IMG, tell us how do you end up here? How do you end up in this space? And what's kind of your personal background? How do you get to where you're at?
That sounds great. Well, how much time do we have? Because I've got all kinds of background stories. So seriously, yeah, you're right. I'm Australian, and I've been living in the US for many years now. But growing up, my dad was a civil engineer. And so as a family, we would travel around Australia. We move every year and a half to 3 years as he moved from one civil project to another. And then he got into mining and looking after mine towns and so on. So we lived all through the outback in all the major cities in Australia. And then at one point in kind of my preteen years, we lived in Papua New Guinea. We lived on an island called Bougainville, which is actually part of the Solomon Island group. Surrounded by the Coral Sea, and he was the mining engineer in charge of a mine. It was an open-cut copper mine. In fact, it was the third largest open-cut copper mine in the world at the time. Jeez. And it was really exciting as a young fella growing up in Papua New Guinea and living in the tropics and all that brings to it. But it was also third world. I mean, there was no radio, television. We'd have a ship come in once a month, and we'd get the supplies off the ship, and it would go into the PX, and we'd live off that. And for 4 years, I never drank fresh milk. All the milk was out of a can. And to this day, I can't even smell Tongala milk or Carnation milk without.
How old are you at this point, right? I mean, this
how old are you? This is the preteen years. So, 12 through 15, kind of that range, and which was very exciting because Bougainville was, there was a lot of activity in the Solomon Islands during World War II. And for those who know their World War II history a little bit, Guadalcanal is 2 islands down in the Solomon Islands, where there was a lot of battles there with the Japanese. The American Marines and the Australian Armed Forces were holding the Solomon Islands. They tried to stem the tide of the Japanese advance to come take over Australia. So if it wasn't for the American naval and Marine forces being able to have the big battle, naval battle in the Coral Sea, which is just off the Great Barrier Reef in northern Australian waters, we'd probably be speaking Japanese in Australia today. So thank you very much to all my Yank friends. We appreciate that. I'm terrible with languages, so I wouldn't have done any good learning Japanese. Anyway, so growing up in that environment was a lot of fun and exciting. And, through my growing up years, I watched what my dad did, and as a civil engineer, working with all these really big trucks, these 105-ton trucks and the big drag line cranes and guy stuff. I loved it. So I'm like, yeah, I'm going to be a civil engineer too. Yeah. You bet. I'm good. So fast forward, and I go to the University of Queensland in Brisbane, Australia. And I'm halfway through my first semester of civil engineering, and I'm sitting there in a midterm exam. There's about 150 kids. We're in an auditorium, and at the front of the auditorium is this big block of pre-stressed concrete with rebar metal sticking out of it, kind of like a Star Wars looking thing. And we had 2 hours to write a paper about this block of concrete. Now, I'll admit, I think I was hungover at the time, but
like all good college kids.
there you go. That's it. I mean, it's just a way of life. And I'm like, nah, I do not care about this block of concrete. I don't think I could ever care about this block of concrete. So tore it up paper and I walked out.
How long did you stare at this block? And I'm sure it probably felt like forever. How long did you sit there staring at that before you just decided, no, I'm done?
It was probably just a few minutes, James, but it felt like hours. And I'm staring down at this blank sheet of paper and I've got nothing, just nothing. I'm like, yeah. So I march out of class and I called a mate of mine, and this was before cell phones, and I said, I've got to go home and tell the parents that I've quit college here. And he said, well, I'm working as a bellman over at the local hotel, and we've got an opening. You want to come here? Unless you can go home and say, hey, I found a job. Yeah, no worries. That sounds great. So I get over there and, they hire me on the spot. And when you want me to start, they had a shift that afternoon. So I'm like, okay, great. I'll go home, get changed, and I'll come in and I'll start work right away. So I go home and get changed, and kind of out the door, I'm, Mum, Dad, by the way, I dropped out of university and I've got a job as a bellman, so all's good, and off I go. And I'm sure I still had that picture of my parents' faces. They're just there, that slack jaw, gobsmacked look, the jaws on the ground, like what, without even a conversation, off I go. And so I'm halfway through my first shift and I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. You get paid to do this. This is great. It's like playing house. So that sparked me to say, you know what? I want to have a hotel career. So I'd been working there for many months when I finally decided that. And I look around Australia, and at the time, there really wasn't any business schools that talked about hotel management. It was all just culinary schools. And I didn't want to learn how to cook, and I could really care less. So I looked around the world, and where do you go for business? Who's got the best business in the world? America. So who we got in America? University of Denver, Colorado, has a very good hotel restaurant management program. And at the time, I think it was number 3 in the country. I do not know where it ranks today. But they had a very progressive international student recruitment program to get people to come into their hotel management courses. So I apply, I get accepted, and I come over to America. I go to university there, and I need to work, got to pay the rent. And so I start working with Marriott Hotels at the time as a bellman. And I stayed with Marriott for about 8 years, and I ended up having a hotel career that was almost 15 years long. And today I live in Atlanta, and I got transferred down to Atlanta. I took a job in Atlanta.
Still with Marriott? Or
no,
is this
at this point I'd moved on. Yeah, I'd moved on from Marriott, and I'd got recruited away. Marriott's got a great training program, and so other hotel companies love to poach Marriott-trained personnel. So I got swept up in all of that. And I actually came to Atlanta in a career progression to be a part of the worldwide sales effort for a hotel brand, and ended up at the corporate office for what is now Intercontinental Hotels. I got into that wonderful job, climbing that ladder, and I get into the corporate office, and there's no ballrooms anymore, and there's no guests anymore. It's all REITs and hotel portfolios, and it's like, nah, this is boring. So once again,
you lost the people.
I drop out. There's no events. There's no people. There's no excitement. There's no connectivity. And they do a great job. Don't get me wrong. It just wasn't for me. So I drop out, and I'm in Atlanta going, okay, what do I do now? And I start up my own event planning company. And,
so what year is this when you start your company?
This was in the early 90s. Okay. So all through the 90s, I started 2 companies. One was a corporate event production company, and that was working with corporations and other entities about their business messaging and designing events and towards known outcomes to really have better impact, make them more efficient, and have them more experiential for their guests. And this is now for primarily clients or employees of the corporations. Well, I found out there's a lot of convention work in Atlanta, so I also started up a DMC, a destination management company, working with inbound conventions to the city of Atlanta to design what they needed, be the local resource. You need a DJ, florist, you need a shuttle system for your motorcoach shuttle system for your attendees for a multi-property convention, offsite events, whatever it might be. I designed it, managed it, and so forth. So Again, fast forward, both those companies are doing very well all through the 90s. And then we ran into 9/11. And the landscape, as it did for a lot of people, changed, and the convention business in Atlanta changed. And it only took a couple of years post 9/11 that we just could not sustain our business. And so I closed the doors. But that business I started with me and a phone book. And I used the convention planner before it went online. And it'd give you the contact for all the conventions, they're coming into town, who was the person to call and so on. And that's just dialing for dollars, saying, hey, what do you need? Need a DJ? Great. I'll book it for you. Managed it, made a few dollars on the side. Starting out with that mode, if you will, grew the company to 35 employees, and
Wow.
we're about $10 million in fees revenues at our peak at the end of the 90s. The dot-com bubble kind of burst a few things, and then it ran into 9/11. So there was kind of a slide there for the way business was being handled. It pushed everything online, and so Google stepped in where personal service and interrupted the personal service providers, because the corporations post 9/11 froze everything. And they were like, well, we still got to have our meetings. We still got to do what we're doing. Well, how do we do that? Well, the young guns at the time said, we've got this lovely thing called the internet. Let's use Google search, and you need a motorcoach, you need a DJ. You don't have to call someone like Phelps. Just go in Google search and it'll tell you who's out there.
Was that a slow progression? Was that something where, you started seeing a changing tide and you had time to react to it?
It was slow, and it bent more to, rather than the personal relationship and being their go-to person, the Google search environment, because the internet was really starting to flourish at that point. Right. Remember, these are the MySpace time period, right, when you'd had MySpace pages, and people were emerging from that into having a website, which looked like basically a digital PDF version of what their print website,
people were making their websites on Microsoft Word at that point.
That's right. That's exactly right.
I remember. Yeah. I remember making a couple of those god-awful websites.
There was no click-throughs. There was none of this. So this was in that early days. Well, 9/11 really, and the dot-com bubble bursting, that was the stimulus of the use of the websites and so on. Well, that continued. We ran into other things, and we finally had to close the doors. We did a soft landing. It just didn't work for what we were, which is okay.
So tell us a bit, right? That's a term that I don't think we've ever used on the show. Tell us what a soft landing is. What does it mean when you exit a business as a soft landing?
Well, that's where basically you chain the doors and you say, hey, we're not in business anymore. And you turn around and you pay off your creditors. Sometimes, and in my case, it was, cents on the dollar. We think we paid 30 cents on the dollar to the few people that we owed money to. We sold the building that I owned at the time and got out from under that. And we still had open contracts with clients. So what I did was take employees and put them together in little, basically project management groups, introduce them directly to the client, let the client know that the company was going out of business, but that this group of professionals who were already servicing their project would then finish out the contract, and you pay them the balance, and they'll work for whatever the remaining balance was, with the goal to maintain that client for themselves. And that this was help them have a progression to continue their profession. Well, out of the 35 employees, got 17 of them today own their own businesses from that point. So it worked out well for many of them that they'd got their kickstart. They got trained in the company that we had, and that they maintained the client. And it's a lot easier to grow a business when you've got clients, rather than just setting it up and then go look for clients. So that was a good kickstart, and it was the way to do it. This way, I knew that I wanted to continue working in the industry. So I didn't want to just go bankrupt and, run away. Right. I had the ability to pay things off and keep my head high in the industry. And talk about a learning curve was incredible. It really bruises the ego, though. I got to tell you, you really have to suck it up and take it on the chin. Some people are not happy, but most everybody understood, and then stay active in the industry that I really love. So it worked out really well.
I think a couple things stand out to me.
Yeah.
First, I can tell you your experience with your first business. I envy a little bit, because my first business that I started, we did a soft landing at the end, but we never reached that scale, right? We never got to the point where we had all the employees and 10 million in fees and those. Ours was more kind of bootstrap, trying to figure it out. And for us, I did the same thing when I exited my first business. I happen to be very relationship driven. Anybody that's
Mhm.
worked with me at PAX, any of my existing customers know I'm the guy that if you call me at 3 a.m., I'm going to answer.
Mm.
Even if you're drunk, right? Don't call me drunk at 3 a.m., but I'm the guy that I'll answer. So my big thing is when we exited our first business that I had with my dad, we were kind of the same boat as you. We
Mm.
wanted to leave with our dignity intact. We wanted to make sure that our clients ended up where they needed to be. But we had figured out in our case, we had seen a similar erosion. We had
Mm.
seen a lot of regulation changes. We'd seen a lot of things that made that business not viable. So I've got a ton of respect for you doing that. Now, let me ask you. So you make the soft landing.
Yep.
You get out. It sounds like completely unscathed. It sounds like a win, right? You've gotten out. You've taken care of your people in terms of your internal clients, which are your customers. You're taking care of your external clients. You've really kind of set everything up to make a soft transition out. How does that then change to you moving to IMG? What does that next
Oh, yeah,
chapter open up and
we've
look
got a
like?
big step before that.
Okay.
So I must tell you, it was the right thing to do. It was the hardest thing I had to do because basically I had to euthanize the company, and I'd grown the company with my sweat equity every single moment that for those
Well, and you're
dozen
10
years.
years in, right?
Oh, we're more than 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're almost 12 years at this point.
Oh, geez.
And it was like having a child die, I'll be honest. It was quite emotional. And I couldn't even look at photographs of events or the company or reflect any for a couple of years after that. I mean, I literally was mourning the death of that company because I had put so much into it. But, God had something else in mind for me. I didn't know it at the time, but I knew that, okay, if that wasn't meant to be. Unfortunately, it did result in a divorce. The marriage broke up. Still got the 3 kids from the marriage. They're all grown now. 3 boys. So they're off doing their own careers, which is wonderful. So it was a big reset. So it's like, okay, what do I do now?
So now it's like a whole life reset, right?
It is a life reset, and it's like, well, where do we go from this point? Yeah. I knew that I still enjoyed the travel and event business, whatever that was going to be. And there was an opportunity. I went out there as a consultant, used my experience, see what I can do to help others. Yep. I found out that consultancy is almost like having a doctor friend. I don't have time to come to your office and I can't afford your fees, but I've got this pain. What do you think the pain might be? I've got this event I'm trying to do. I've got this challenge with my company. So everybody loves free advice. And frankly, that's how the travel industry is anyway, because we all call each other to support each other. We all network because frankly, none of us know what we're doing when it comes to a brand new project, except we've got a process that we've had experience with that has worked in the past, but we always run into something we've never dealt with before, or we've got a challenge that we just can't seem to overcome. Who do we reach out to? We don't phone consultants because frankly, we are the consultants in the travel industry. Yeah. We call each other. That's what we do. We call our friends or the people we do business with, or if we're in an association of some kind, we call other members of the association. But that's what this whole business is, behind the scenes, and that's what we do. We figure it out using each other, whether it's our vendors or even our clients sometimes, to sort out how we get things done. So I went out as a consultant. That didn't last very long, but one of the consultant clients that I had needed someone in-house. They wanted to take their meetings department and turn it into a profit center. How do we take it for an internal meetings management department and put it on the street to work for other clients and open up revenue stream to our company?
So almost spinning a business out of their existing
That's
department.
Right. Because they've done it with their marketing communications. They would do it for other. Now, this was an association management company. For those who don't know, it's basically a corporation who's in business to manage trade, associations, and professional societies. So what would happen is they'd contract with the volunteer board that will take all your admin function and we'll take over your marketing, meetings management, your books, and all of these things. We put together an employee group and they become the staff, quote unquote, of your association. So this association management company, it was the largest in the world at the time. We
Wow.
had 7 offices around the world, headquartered in Atlanta, so it was down the street from me.
Is this
New
all
York.
travel associations, or is this
No,
just
this is
spread
an
across
association
everything?
management company that was in all industries.
Okay.
And yes, they were in travel. They were managing an airline passenger experience association. This was basically an airline association. They were in manufacturing. They had trade groups. They had professional societies like medical, insurance, financial, all types of industries, because it's an 80-20 rule. 80% of the functions for any association is exactly the same.
Yeah.
The 20% is the flavor of that particular association, which is dictated not just by the member group, but also the industry that they're in. Obviously, insurance agents look a lot different than the plumber trade association.
Well, we talk about this a lot in our industry, right? And being in training, being someone that helps develop operations, I get calls all the time. You're not going to understand. Our company is totally and completely different. Okay, so are we dealing with vehicles that have wheels on them? Yes.
Right.
Are we dealing with drivers that drive these vehicles? Yes. Are they doing what you want them to do? No. Okay. So we've established the 80 that's going to be the same. Let's now talk about your 20. So it makes total sense.
That's it. So at the peak, we had 188 associations that we managed, and I headed up the convention, meetings, and membership department. Anyway, so as a consultant, I'd shown them, well, this is what you got to do to make this thing profitable. And I said, well, your biggest problem is your meetings department is full of meetings people. These are logistics management people. Nobody there is in sales. Nobody there is in marketing. Nobody there is forward thinking. You got no strategy. Well,
there's no people
roadmap. That's right. Here's the roadmap that you paid me to do. Here you go. And the chairman at the time said, this is great. Can you do this? And I said, well, certainly can, but not as an outside consultant. I've got no authority. So great. What if we create the position and you come in and you run the division? Okay. I did that. And that led to an almost 20-year career with this company, overseeing global offices in China and Brussels, Bahrain, Singapore, all across America.
So are you boots on the ground at every single event then?
No, not at all. We had, with 188 associations, we had 300 meetings, events, trade shows, and conventions every year. Wow. So again, I had about a 30 to 40 team staff scattered in these offices. And they're the ones who were boots on the ground. I definitely got involved with the ones that needed strategic assistance. Like it was a struggling industry. We need to reposition that meeting within the industry. So I'd get involved with it. Or we've taken on an association to manage, and it's the convention or the annual meetings in deep stress. They're financially upside down, whatever it might be. I get involved with those things. If it's just functionally going through, great. One of the meetings managers would take it and they make sure that the food and beverage is lined up, the AB, and that the hotel they're booking is contracted correctly, those types of things. So I did that for almost 20 years, James, and enjoyed the heck out of it.
How similar was that to your first company? Because it sounds like there's a lot of alignment there.
Did
it kind of feel like a second breath, almost like a second wind to the first company? Or what did that feel like to you running that?
What it did for me, having my companies, which as an entrepreneur, as you are yourself, growing a company takes certain inversion layers of growth for yourself. So rather than just a sales guy or an operations guy, I had to evolve to be a director. I had to evolve to be a CEO.
Do you have to grow to be able to grow?
I had to grow. That's right. And so through that process, I understood more how to manage other people because I'd gone through those inversion layers myself. And so coming into a larger corporation and running a division, I'd done all the jobs down at the menial task level all the way up to the strategic level. So I better understood what they needed and how to help them grow in their position as professionals, but also be more effective for the client side.
Right.
Loved it too. Absolutely loved it. But I got to tell you, it was a lot of wear and tear, traveling globally, 2 weeks a month and being on your feet and running conventions in not just throughout America, but around the world. Sometimes they're 18-hour days.
Well,
and there's a lot of physical wear and tear. And it was to finally reach the point. It's like, you know what? I got to find another way to do this because I'm gonna run out of steam physically. I haven't, but I knew I would do. And it just timing. And again, this is how God works. It works in amazing ways that you can't see. I got a tap on the shoulder at a trade show, and a recruiter said, you know what? We got this position over at IMG. It really takes a unique person for this. The current person, which you all know as Bronwyn Wilson, who coincidentally is also from Australia. She's from Melbourne. I'm from Brisbane. Just a little respect there. Anyway, so he said, you need to apply for this job. We really need someone of your capability. And I said, let me sit with it for a little while. And it took a few months to noodle it. And said, sure, this sounds like what I'm excited to do, is to be able to take all those many years of skill sets in those different environments and apply it now to an organization that needs my kind of skill set.
Yeah.
What I walked into at IMG was amazing. I mean, a very well-run organization.
It's not like any other group I've ever been a part of.
Not, and it exceptional is the word I would use,
Absolutely.
Which is wonderful, because I get to stand on that success and look to the future. Well, where do we go from here? We've got certain headwinds in the industry. We've got certain headwinds within membership groups. We've got things that we have to deal with, not just the short term, like changes of administration and regulatory type things, but longer term, what's happening on the client side? What's their world look like, and how do we adapt for it? So there's a lot of that background, which seemed to be very applicable for what I was doing.
So I was really lucky
today.
Yeah. And I was really lucky that, we had worked with an IMG partner out of California with TCS, with Kevin and Terry Fisher. We've been working with them on their training. And so we got invited into IMG, and it's completely different than any other group. And I'll call it group because I want you to kind of explain the difference here in a second. But, for IMG, one of the things that we saw is IMG really kind of represented the top of the motor coach industry, and the goals and the way that IMG operates and everything there. Even becoming a part of IMG for us was an interview process. Are you a right fit to be a partner? Yes, you've been invited by someone that's working with you within the group, but are you the right fit? Tell us about yourself. So becoming a partner with IMG was a really big deal for us because of how you guys operate. So I know when I first got in the motor coach industry, it kind of felt like it was this group, and they do meetings at ABA, they do meetings at UMA. I didn't know if it was an association. It was kind of this mythical group, right, of these top tier operators. Can you help kind of pull that curtain back a bit and tell us, right, what is IMG? Some people think it's an association, right? Other people think it's some kind of club. What if you had to go explain IMG to someone that was new to the industry, that has no idea what we're talking about, and they just think it's another acronym? How do you package that up in a way they can understand to really bring them up to speed on what IMG actually is?
Oh, great question. And very happy to, because I do this every day now. I find out there's always somebody who needs to better understand what IMG is. And having gone through that same question myself, what is this thing? I quickly understood it. So IMG is actually a corporation. It's not an association. It's an invitation-only membership group of the high-end motor coach charter service operators. Okay. We focus on the charter servicing, regardless of what other aspects that the member might have, whether it's black car, school bus, transit, what have you. It's the charter service. That's what this organization is about. And IMG was formed for two distinct reasons. They formed it about 25 years ago. I think it's about 26 years now, because last year was their 25th anniversary. But it was formed for two distinct reasons. One is to create a distinction between the vast landscape of everybody in the bus industry, right, whether motor coach or whatever it might be, is, well, how do we create distinction with the charter service and the higher end charter service? Those that are able to invest more in their vehicles, that they're newer. They can invest a little bit more time and effort into their safety training, their driver training, their employer training. Those that are really focused on operational excellence, where it's not just a desire, but they actually do the work.
They're embodying
to put together repeatable training programs, which I know you're very familiar with. In fact, you are a great vendor for many of our IMG members, and we appreciate that. Thank you very much, James. But and so that's the first reason. The second one was, all of the motor coach operators are very regional. Some are bigger than others, obviously, but some are in their little valley in their town, and this is the area that we've worked with for many, many years and so forth. And others have multi-locations and so on. Well, it was this way. The individual motor coach operator didn't have to invest in attracting the national business to their specific location. All the members would pool their resources and create this brand called IMG that's that has marketing support behind it with branding recognition to create that IMG is the higher end operators. These are the ones that invest a little bit more, have a little bit more on the insurance coverage, that and so forth. So when the client looks at it, no matter what the name on the door of the vehicle is, if they had the IMG membership logo, they know right away, oh, you're qualified to be at the higher level. So I know I can buy it. Listen, I came out of the hotel business. Let me give you a little different parallel. Just like all the motor coach operators are independently owned, hotels are often independently owned. And a hotel sitting wherever in some city, or whether it's, in a resort or what have you, they need help in attracting more business into their hotels, and they need to tap into a much bigger picture marketing exercise. That's why hotel owners will put a Marriott name or a Hilton name or Wyndham or Intercontinental, whatever it might be. They pay money to have that franchise name put on the door. We're the Ritz-Carlton. So in the hotel industry, if you see a Ritz-Carlton or a Four Seasons, one of the higher brands, you know right away, oh, this is a high-end operator. Probably going to cost me more money, but you're going to get that white glove service versus your limited service properties or your general full service Marriott or Hilton property. It's the same thing with us. By putting the IMG brand on that motor coach operator, this is the brand of excellence. This is the brand of high customer service. So that's the whole vision with it. And that's what has been known throughout the tour operator market and collegiate sports and student youth travel. And there's so many markets that recognize and understand the IMG brand. So in a nutshell, that's what that is. But because we're a corporation, we can set very stringent membership guidelines. In other words, there's quite a healthy checklist of what you have to have in place to become a member. You have to be invited. You have to be invited by another member to come on in to the organization, and then we run you through. After you've applied, we run you through quite a very, very distinguished but very detailed process to make sure that you're the operator that you put yourself out to be, and we understand because your other fellow operators are the ones that are assessing you. And it's not like we just have a membership person. So we're not an organization that would sell memberships like your typical association. You join a member and then do what you wish. You have criteria also to be active. And the member is the owner of the company. So the profile of our members is the family-owned and operated motor coach operator. We do have a few exceptions. Some of those are grandfathered in, and some are because of the ownership structure. As long as they're involved at the ownership level, that's where the member comes in. So that was kind of point one. Why we're doing is to have the marketing brand and everything. But on the client side, sure, it's great to see the credibility, and I can instantly recognize. But the power of IMG is the network that we've created. So our members are strategically placed around USA and Canada so that no matter where the client enters the network, they're fully supported across the geographic landscape as their tours move across the country. So if they've got a tour starting in New York and it's on its way to LA for some reason, Peter Park or what it may be, and it runs into trouble, say in Kansas, our Kansas member runs out right away. Either replaces the bus so the clients can keep going, or they fix it on the spot and keep them on the road. And it's that network of support that has become the real power of IMG. And that's the members have all, and my predecessor and her predecessor and those involved with IMG have spent a lot of time and a lot of sweat equity to get that brand built. And we work hard to maintain that brand. That that this brand and the members of this brand live up to what the branding is, or the hype. We live up to the hype.
Well, and there's some big things. There's a lot to unpack there because you've hit on a lot of things that make IMG completely different from any other group in the industry. You think of a 20 group where operators are going to get together, they're going to discuss, they're going to hold people accountable, they're going to do that. That's a completely different concept, completely different idea. What makes so much sense with the way IMG is set up is that you have a like mindset, and that in all the time that we've been in IMG, and I'm sure this will go on in perpetuity, almost every operator that I meet and talk to, even though they get together, they're talking about their issues, they're trying to figure things out, they are looking at it from the sense of, how do I stay ahead? How do I stay in the top 10%?
Mhm.
How do I provide the highest level of service? When I say they're my type of people, I mean that, because in my world of training, we see a lot of cyclical problems. We see a lot of, hey, I had an issue. I need to revamp my training program. And then
Mhm.
6 months later, it's, we need to do a budget cut. We need to pull back the training program, save money. And that kind of goes on and on.
Right.
Whereas IMG operators, because of the way that they've brought these people together and they're all working towards the same goal, it's, how do I get ahead of this? How do I stay ahead of this? How do we as a group figure out how to share that and stay ahead of it? And you've got this collaborative effort to where, like you said, one of the unique things with IMG operators is it doesn't matter where a tour starts. It doesn't matter where that trip starts. You know that if you're on a bus that has IMG on it, they have that network. It doesn't matter what happens where, those members are going to support each other. And then there's also a lot of education. There's also a lot of work there in terms of lifting things up. So I think, I love kind of bringing this up because I really think it's unique in the space. I don't know of any other group across any level of passenger ground transportation that exists that kind of has this same level of attention to detail and
Mhm.
mindset.
Mhm.
So I know, kind of like you said, this is a group that's been around for a while. This is something you've been working on. Let me ask you, coming from your background, you've got this beautiful perspective on people. One of the things that we've heard you bring up again and again is, I find myself, I get to a role, the block of concrete, getting into the REITs and the management, the piece. You are a people person, right? That's kind of your calling, is to connect and work with people. I don't know that there's a better role, but how does it feel kind of being able to bring an outside perspective? And what are the things that you kind of see as opportunities or ways that you see yourself as being able to contribute, knowing that you're not going to have those same kind of rose colored grasses that someone that grew up or was in the industry has?
Right, right. Well, and let's not forget, we're all part of the travel industry. I started out in
Absolutely.
the hotel side, DMCs, convention planning, and so forth. Frankly, it's all part of the hospitality and travel industry.
Absolutely.
Every single one of us in the travel industry are in business to service other people who are traveling for some reason, whether it's
Yep.
a simple point A to point B, or if it's a wedding and a destination wedding, or whatever it might be, in some discipline area, we are servicing others who are traveling, be
Right.
it for business, personal, what have you, which means that we all enjoy servicing other people for what they need. We don't sell products, we service people. And there's a certain mindset that is throughout the travel industry, that we're all entrepreneurial in our mindset, because every single personal experience is a little bit different because it's unique. The 80-20 rule. I don't really care why they're traveling, but 80% of it's going to be the same, to your point, around wheels and vehicles and so forth. But
Yep.
whether it's a plane or a ship, or they're staying in a hotel or eating in a restaurant, or they're attending a concert or whatever it might be, there's a whole cadre of people behind the scenes working to service those people as they travel for their experience. So I am not unique by any means. The entire industry is built around this whole concept of traveling other people. Um, in fact, let me give it a little bit of a story. So I okay, International Motorcoach Group, great. What are these people? Is it an association? So I got that all sorted out, and I'm like, well, where did the word bus come from?
Like the actual origin of the word bus,
Yeah,
right?
the word bus.
Okay.
How did we come up with that word? Was it something else? I don't know. So anyway, I did do a little bit of research on it right before I came on. So came into the position so I could better understand, well, what is our history?
You went
And
all the way back.
all the way back. Now, I imagine there was group transportation back in the Egyptian, the Roman days, and so on. Just look at the ships. I mean, they threw groups of people on there to go fight other people. So I'm sure there was, ground transportation of some sort. But in modern times, so to back it up just a little bit, so the word omnibus is where it really originated.
Okay.
And omnibus is a French word, which means vehicle for all. And that's a derivative of Latin, which is omnes, O-M-N-E-S. So the Latin version is omnes, and it grew into omnibus, and it means vehicle for all. And that was I don't know where that came from. But anyway, so in 1823, there was a French corn mill owner. His name was Bourbry. It was like Stan Bourbry, Stanislas Bourbry, something like that. Baurby. Anyway, he lived outside the city of Nantes, and Nantes, Nantes, France. Nantes is on the kind of the southwest coast of France, just south of the English Channel. It's a coastal town, but inland, he had agriculture. He was a corn mill owner. Well, one of the byproducts of crushing corn and making corn meal, the corn mill, is hot water. And so he decided to establish a spa business. So he's going to have this hot water spa, but people living in the town, how do I get them out here? So to encourage them, he started this horse-drawn transportation service from the city center of Nantes.
The true entrepreneur. He's already spun off two businesses from one idea.
Yeah, look, let me do a line run. He didn't really have that. But anyway, so he got that going. But on the way, he would stop at the shop of a hatter. And the hatter's name was Omnes, O-M-N-E with a little S, Omnes. And so he put up a sign there saying, we do the Omnes Omnibus. It was a play on words for them. There was all this kind of play on words. And so he started this run, stop at the Hatters so people could buy a hat, I guess, and then continue on to the spa. So that's where it all came from, is from this fellow in 1823 in France. Well, unfortunately, the rest of that story is people really didn't care about the spa. They loved going to the Hatters, so he'd quit doing the runs to the spa, and he just continued to go to other destinations that people could shop. So shopping was the derivative of the transportation industry, which is still what it is today. People fly to New York City to go shopping. I guess that's how it goes.
I got to tell you, as far as businesses go, I feel like a lot of people have been on that same business journey. I have an idea. I end up with two businesses. This one doesn't work out. I pivot. I partner with someone. That is probably one of the best stories to line up our industry, because, part of what we do is as you mentioned with travel, you're always part in a chain. If there's no destination, there's no point in having the bus, right? You've got the hotel industry, you've got the bus industry, you've got all of these different industries, right? The airline industry, all of them that kind of chain and work together. And so I think it's interesting that in that one little story of the birth of the word bus, we have a lot of that dynamic going on. So it makes a lot of sense, right? 100 years later, and we're, 100 and then some, we're still kind of seeing those same little micro stories play out.
Well, that's it. So then I explored it further. Say, so that gives me the word bus, but it's used in kind of a transit mode. That's getting him to kind of a point A, point B on a scheduled run, if you will, is my interpretation. So then, evolve that to school bus or evolve it to transit buses, but that's where bus is. Well, where did motorcoach come from? Well, that was easier because it started with the stagecoach.
Yep.
And we would go to stagecoach. It's going to take you out the West. All right. You buy a ticket, you get on that stagecoach and you go out there with a group of people or whatever it might be. And of course, then they added motors. So it turned into motorcoach. So that one was a little simpler to understand. So understanding the roots of why people do things is a great way to learn how to take them to the next level.
Right.
And, many of our members are in their third, fourth, and we even have one that's in their fifth generation. The fifth generation is very young, but working in the business. I think they're changing vending machines. I think they fill the cans of Coke in the vending machines, but it doesn't really matter.
Got to start somewhere.
Thing with my kids.
Got to start somewhere.
That's right. So, one of the headwinds we run into today is the succession planning, and it's not unique to the motor coach industry. That's in many family-owned businesses where there's many more choices today for the emerging generation, that they may not decide to work in great granddad's business that granddad took over and my dad took over. And I'm not interested in making blue widgets. Thank you very much. So we do have that bit of a pressure because there's different types of jobs that existed back then. Look at all the technology related jobs. Look at you just name it. Society progresses every generation. And with that, some jobs fall off because they're just not needed anymore and they evolve to something else, and brand new jobs come in. One of my sons is a social media manager. I never even heard of that when I was in college. It wasn't even words you'd think that always had, like social studies. Is that what that is? Type of thing. So we're always there's new jobs in. So of course it's not automatic that the emerging generation is going to take over the family business. So that's one of the challenges we have. Well, what do you do with your business at that point? So we're exploring that. There's always economic cycles that come in. And unfortunately, in the last 25 years, starting with 9/11, the traditional 9-year economic downturn hasn't happened because it's been disrupted with a 9/11 and then a global financial crisis and then COVID. These aren't just downturns. These are industry disruptors. I mean,
absolutely.
Societal disruptors. So we've got to look to the future. What's the next weird thing that we couldn't even see coming? Hands up anybody who saw that a pandemic would stop the world for as long as it did. Hands up anybody who thought that some underhanded financial sales in the mortgage world would crash the entire global financial structure. Who thought that somebody would want to fly a 757 or whatever it was into buildings to collapse them? These are just off the wall. Well, those are the times we're in. And it's unfortunate because there's some great things that happen at this time period. There's also some very disturbing and horrible things that happen. So we're in this, there's no rhythm anymore. There's no cycles anymore. It's just be ready for the next thing.
Right.
And that's what we're all preparing for, that you can't count on what the last 100 years of growth looked like, because the way things grow these days, they're much more accelerated. Every company is basically 90 days away from going out of business. If you, especially small businesses, if you turned off the revenue stream, how many businesses go out of the business in 90 days? So you have to have that kind of a 90-day approach to it, what we got to do in the short term. But as always, you've got to have a long-term approach. Where's the horizon? We're leaving LA today, and where are we going? Oh, we're going to go to Calgary, or we're going to New York. It's a direction that we're going to go, and then we're going to navigate the way that we get there. So your business talks about that. Well, this is a lot of what IMG brings, because we have these incredibly successful, very knowledgeable, very dedicated owners and their senior executive staff in IMG, and our meetings and our events that we do. And in fact, our written communication, and we have chat groups we set up. We have all kinds of levels of communication, but not just at the owner to owner level, but also at the director to director, the safety to safety, maintenance to maintenance, operator to operator, in the disciplines, so that they're all switching ideas back and forth. It's almost like IMG is a franchise, and these are the independent operator owners of them, and we share information like you would there. Now, I'll be clear: we don't get into the numbers. We're not like a SPADA group where we're opening our books and getting into the numbers. None of that. It's still a member group under a marketing moniker, but we do generate revenue as a brand to our individual members, because clients reach out to IMG as a one-stop shop.
Right.
And that's where the power comes in for the client, because, they know with one call, they get today 53 high quality owner operators with multiple locations. And so grand scale, we get a call from World Cup. World Cup sets up the meeting. All our members are on the call, and we solve their problem right off the bat. Yep. So that's the power of what IMG is all about. And to answer your question, I'm so excited about it, because helping an organization that is rooted in the best qualities with the best intentions, they're without the infighting or the erosion of politics or personalities or these types of things, that this organization, every single member pulls in the same direction.
Right.
So being able to help guide that and lay out, where are we going for the next 10 years? What do we expect the world to look like in 10 years? We have those kind of conversations and walk it back into a roadmap. Well, then what are we going to do this year to best situate ourselves 10 years from now? And it's so refreshing for the individual member to have a group of like-minded owners who that they can openly share, ask questions, and as a collective are way more powerful than any one individual would be. And so one day I can see IMG be a case study in marketing and management classes at universities. And it's such a powerful network. It's amazing.
I think for me, one of the big things that attracted me is the, like I said earlier, that mindset, because you've kind of alluded to it a little bit here. But, I remember when our most recent event that we had when we were in Philadelphia, and so IMG was there, For anybody that's listening that doesn't know, so typically IMG is going to co-locate with the ABA and UMA events. And so, and this year we were co-located with ABA. And so we were in one of the sessions, and it's very different to what you would expect. You know, people think because it's an acronym, it acts like an association. One of the things that I've always found interesting is you will see at that event, you're going to see the head of maintenance, you're going to see people from the office, you're going to see all these different parts of the business. And even though we're not opening books and talking numbers, all of that education, all those sessions are revolving around running as a top 10% company. I know one of the sessions that was kind of burned into my mind because you talked about the different cycles and the things we've seen was the natural disasters educational session, where the members were talking about, right? We had everything from, I believe it was in Tennessee where there was a tornado and flooding. You had, I want to say it was, I don't remember if it was Mike or who it was from Polyad, but they had someone there from Polyad talking about how they were part of the disaster relief with the fires and the issues in Hawaii. You had, you know, Stephen O'Shea from Lancer Insurance talking about what happened when they had the hurricane and the flooding and getting ahead of it, right? We're talking about, here's what happened. Here's how we were able to address it. Here's how we do it differently. Here's, and as someone that's in the training education space, I sit in a session like that and I look like a 5-year-old kid who's just been giving the world's biggest lollipop because I'm smiling ear to ear. I'm going, we're playing chess, not checkers, right? I tell my clients that. I say that on almost every episode I can. It always comes up, right? We're playing chess, not checkers. We're so focused on being in the top 10%. We're so focused on being ahead that we're thinking about these types of things that could happen and being ready to respond and how we'd react and having a plan in place so that when it does happen, we're ready. And you see that come. I was lucky enough to be involved in the roundtables when we were talking about maintenance. How do you find mechanics? How do you train those mechanics? How do you bring them up to speed? What's working? What's not working? How do we leverage all these different tools? And again, we know that we're going into a period where there'll be a mechanic shortage. How do we position ourselves as the most appealing? How do we get ahead of it before it gets worse? That whole mentality really kind of embodies everything that I think IMG stands for and what it provides and how its members operate. So I think kind of as we come to a close here and we finish this out, what does the future hold? What's kind of the vision? Obviously, as someone who's come in, you're able to bring this fresh perspective. You're building on this wonderful legacy that IMG's built. What do you see as the opportunities for growth and to build and to take things even further as IMG progresses and grows into the future?
Great question. And one of the things I'm excited about, James, is the fact that I don't have to fix anything. IMG is an organization, you know, back in the association management days, we'd take on an association to manage. They always came to us broken.
In shambles, right?
You know, whether it was a caustic culture, whether they're financially upside down or they're in a retreating industry. You know, we had one from retail. Let me tell you, that was a headache. Anyway, so I don't have to fix anything. So I only have to look to the future. But what the future holds is two main basics. I mean, there are going to be natural disasters that happen. We'll all overcome it. And there'll be global whatever else will happen. I'm sure it's going to be aliens landing next. I think that's the next one. But they're going to need motorcoaches when they get here. So I want to make sure I get their key contact.
Someone's got to move the military personnel
I tell you what,
right?
you got, you know, they're going to get from the spaceship to wherever they're going to go see the leader of the free world, whatever that is. So you had mentioned about the top 10%.
Yeah.
Our companies, member companies, they're not in business to be the top 10%. That is a byproduct of what their vision and their own culture is, because they're so customer centric, because they're so operationally excellence centric. The byproduct is the fact that they're the top 10% of the industry. And that's so looking to the future, two big areas. One is generational. Every generation adds to the current generation or to the current thing to help take us to the next generation. That curve has been getting steeper and steeper. It happens faster and faster, and the emerging generation brings more to the table than the preceding generations.
Right.
Typically because of, and my point number 2, technology.
Yep.
Where are we with technology today? What's technology look like in the future? How do we still maintain a business full of people who are customer service oriented and adopt technology to make us more efficient? Adopt technology to offer better services or more services, not to replace the people. because we're in the travel industry. You cannot replace people servicing other people.
No,
Otherwise,
it's
it becomes a
experiential.
robot doing room service,
Yes.
and all it's
Yes.
doing is delivering a plate that somebody else put together for you. So,
Right.
sure, we can have. So, part of the technology that we've already discussed and we're underway to adopt in certain areas is AI.
Yep.
How do we get going with AI? How can we learn from experience rather than from consultants? And so we're underway right now to upgrade our website, and it's all in the works. It's being done right now to incorporate AI in there to help us make more efficient and create more of a buyer experience, which is, rather than trying to sell them a bus, sell them the experience, but let AI customize it for that particular buyer. And we have a plan for that. And it took a lot of serious minds to put this roadmap together. We're executing it. We also know, James, that we might fail. We might invest in this, and we're doing a proof of concept version.
Right.
And we'll invest in this. We're going to give it a try, and we're going to see what happens. Well, see, that's what IMG leaders do. We're not just the operational excellence leaders in the industry, but we're also the thought leaders in the industry, because we're trying things to help better the industry and therefore better our companies individually, but collectively. So giving AI a try, and let's literally learn from it rather than just hear about it.
Right.
And that's what we're going to give it a try. Not being afraid to fail. Just do what Sony used to say, fail fast. So that, you can give it a shot, but don't make it a 5-year exercise that you got to live with it. Fail fast. Make it a 90-day exercise. Give it a try. Learn from it. Then pivot at that point. Do we progress on this road? Do we make a slight alteration? Or do we double down and say, you know what? That was great. Let's find the money and let's really go for it and blow it out. So we're in that stage. So trying things is the best thing. We're in the motorcoach industry is it's not an early adopter of technology, as you well know.
Oh, no. The motorcoach industry in general? No.
And frankly, just look at what's going on in the FAA. The airline industry is certainly not an early adopter of technology, since they're still using technology that has green screens and blinking little cute cursors.
I wouldn't even call them an adopter of technology, right? They get technology forced on them and then hold on to it indefinitely.
That's right. Now, we're not in the airline industry, so we really can't comment too much. We're not behind the scenes. But the transportation industry as a whole is not an early adopter of technology. So IMG has the ability, and we also are in the unique position to be able to give things a try. So that's what we're going to try. That's what the future holds. So let's not be afraid and have fear of what we don't know. Let's give it a try so we can stand on experience to make a decision, not live in fear of breaking a norm that we can't live without. Well, and that's what we're giving a shot.
And I love the tie back to the story, right? You brought that story up about how we actually got the bus back in the 1830s. And what happens there? Well, I have an idea. I implement the idea. Part of this doesn't work the way I want. I pivot here. I move there. I adjust. Look, one of the things that I learned very early on in business, and I was lucky enough to learn it, is that if you just find one thing that works and stick to it indefinitely, you're limiting your growth. Eventually someone will come in, someone will try something new. But what I've learned through my business career and owning businesses, and I'm sure you've seen this yourself, Phelps, when you're constantly trying and innovating and working on things, even the ones that fail provide opportunity. If you can't see the opportunity, if you can't see the education, if you can't see the growth in the failure, you're missing the point. Because I can't tell you how many times we've had a project or a thought or something, even when it just absolutely epically implodes or fails or completely not how we wanted, there's always some element of that we either learn something, gain something, and a lot of times you'll see pieces of that pop up somewhere else. So I think if you really want to be an industry leader, you've got to be willing to go out on those limbs. You've got to try things. And I think that's part of what makes IMG such a great place for that, is you've got all of these people that are the leaders in the industry that are looking to push the envelope, that understand it's about the experience. So I got to tell you, I couldn't be more excited about having you on and getting to talk about IMG. I know for us, I have to tell you, out of all of the different groups that we work with, everyone we interact with, I think in terms of just getting to be there and see the way things go and see the mindset, for me, it's probably one of my favorites. So I really appreciate having him on.
Well, thank you.
Do you have anything you want to leave us with? Is there any gleaning little gem or anything on the horizon that you think we absolutely need to touch on before we leave?
Well, not more about IMG, but I'll tell you what, for all the listeners, take a reflection yourself and look at how do you evolve where you're standing today? Because if we all adopt that mindset of growth and not to live in fear of breaking what we know now, but rather explore what we could learn later, it gives us a much better skill set and a much more mental framework to adapt to what does get pushed on us by this ever-changing society. So don't, like you just said, don't sit in your mode of let's just do it the same way all the time. Don't be afraid to try certain things. Don't be afraid to fail, because you just set the boundaries so you're not failing epically, to use your point, but fail short and fail fast.
Yeah. And if you do fail epically, for God's sake, learn.
And then share it. Let someone else know.
Yes.
Let them know what happened. And don't be sad about it. Just understand that it does happen. But I do wish all your listeners all the very best.
Well, thank you again for coming on. Everyone, I appreciate you listening to the podcast. Hopefully you have some value. Hopefully you're able to shed some light on who IMG is and what they do. As always, thanks again for listening.
Thank you so much, James. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Ground Transportation Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please remember to subscribe to the show on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information about PAX Training and to contact James, go to paxtraining.com. And for more information about driving transactions and to contact Ken, go to drivingtransactions.com. We'll see you next time on the Ground Transportation Podcast.